I stared at the paycheck in my hand, the numbers blurring slightly as anger heated my face. $12 an hour. After 5 years of keeping this place running, they'd given me a 50-cent raise. Petra, I need these files organized by noon. Kenneth's voice cut through my thoughts as he breezed past my desk without even glancing at me. His expensive cologne lingered in the air, probably costing more than my weekly paycheck. Behind him, Ramona laughed at something on her phone, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Neither of them noticed me. They never did. But that was about to change. What Kenneth and Ramona didn't know, what they'd never bothered to discover, was that the quiet receptionist they underpaid and overlooked wasn't just an employee. I was a partner. A silent one, yes, but a partner nonetheless. My grandfather had been the original founder of Sterling and Webb Consulting. When he died 3 years ago, he'd left me 30% of the company in a trust. Kenneth and Ramona had bought the remaining 70%, thinking they owned everything. They had no idea I existed as anything more than furniture in the lobby. That was their first mistake. My name is Petra Walsh, and I've been invisible my entire life. Growing up, I was the quiet kid in the back of the classroom, the one teachers forgot to call on, the one who observed while everyone else performed. But being invisible taught me something valuable. People say things around you when they think you don't matter. They make mistakes when they believe no one's watching. 4 or 5 years, I'd sat at the reception desk of Sterling and Webb, answering phones, scheduling meetings, organizing files. Kenneth and Ramona treated me like part of the office equipment, something slightly less important than the printer. When my grandfather died, his lawyer had explained the inheritance. 30% ownership, held in a trust until I turned 28. I'd been 25 then, 3 years away from being able to exercise my full rights. The trust allowed me to observe, to access certain financial records, to attend board meetings as a silent observer if I chose. But Kenneth and Ramona didn't know about any of it. The paperwork had been filed quietly, buried in legal documents they'd signed without reading carefully. They thought they'd bought everything. They had no idea they were renting. The first time I heard them mock me, I was restocking the break room coffee supplies. Kenneth's office door was slightly open. I could hear every word. Honestly, why do we keep Petra? She's so bland. No personality whatsoever. Ramona's laugh was sharp. Because she's cheap. $12 an hour to answer phones and smile at clients? That's a steal. True. Plus she never complains. Never asks questions. Perfect employee, really. Completely replaceable, but convenient. I stood frozen, a box of coffee pods in my hands, listening to them reduce 5 years of my work to a bargain purchase. That conversation happened 6 months ago. It was the moment I decided to stop being passive and start being strategic. I began documenting everything. Every email, every financial irregularity, every corner they cut, every promise they broke to clients. They thought I was just organizing files. I was building a case. They thought I was too simple to understand the business. I'd been studying it for 5 years, learning every detail, every weakness, every pressure point. When my 20th birthday arrived in 4 months, everything would change. But I wasn't waiting until then to start preparing. Sterling and Webb had been a respected consulting firm under my grandfather's leadership. He'd built relationships based on trust, delivered results, charged fair rates. Kenneth and Ramona had different priorities. They wanted growth at any cost, profit over reputation, expansion over excellence. Within a year of taking over, they'd increased prices by 40% while cutting the quality of service. They'd fired experienced consultants and replaced them with recent graduates who worked for half the salary. Clients noticed. I heard the complaints daily. Phone calls from frustrated customers who felt cheated. Emails demanding refunds. Former long-term clients who quietly took their business elsewhere. But Kenneth and Ramona didn't care as long as new clients kept coming in. They operated on a churn and burn model, constantly replacing dissatisfied customers with new ones who didn't know better yet. It was unsustainable. Any business expert could see that. But they were too focused on quarterly profits to notice the foundation crumbling beneath them. I watched it all from my desk, my grandfather's legacy being dismantled piece by piece. That hurt worse than their insults, worse than the low pay, worse than being invisible. They were destroying something good, something that had meant everything to my grandfather. And I was going to stop them. My opportunity came from an unexpected source, a longtime client named Mr. Hutchins. He'd worked with my grandfather for 15 years. He was loyal, paid on time, and referred other clients regularly. He was exactly the kind of customer Kenneth and Ramona should have valued. Instead, they'd assigned him to their least experienced consultant and doubled his rates. Mr. Hutchins called the office furious. I was the one who answered. I want to speak to someone in charge, he demanded. This is unacceptable. Your grandfather would never have treated me this way, Petra. I blinked in surprise. He remembered me from years ago, from occasional visits to the office when I was younger. I'm so sorry, Mr. Hutchins. Let me see what I can do. Don't bother. I'm taking my business elsewhere. And I'm telling every business owner I know to do the same. Sterling and Webb isn't what it used to be. After he hung up, I sat quietly for a moment. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called him back on my personal phone. Mr. Hutchins, this is Petra Walsh. I wondered if you might have time to meet for coffee. There's something you should know about the company. We met at a small cafe 3 blocks from the office. Mr. Hutchins arrived wearing a suit, looking skeptical but curious. I brought a folder. I need you to understand something, I said quietly. My grandfather left me 30% of Sterling and Webb. Kenneth and Ramona don't know. They think they own everything. His eyebrows shot up. 30%? That's significant. It's held in a trust until I turn 28. That's in 4 months. Once that happens, I have full voting rights and access to all company decisions. And you're telling me this because I want to save what my grandfather built. But I need allies. I need people who remember what this company used to be. I opened the folder and showed him documents. Financial statements showing how Kenneth and Ramona had inflated expenses. Client complaints they'd ignored. Quality metrics that had plummeted. Mr. Hutchins studied the papers, his expression growing darker. This is fraud, he said finally. They're charging premium rates for inferior service. They're essentially stealing from clients. Yes, and when I take control, I'm going to fix it. But until then, I need you to trust me. Keep your business with us, even if it's minimal. Stay connected, because when the time comes, I'm going to need witnesses. He looked at me for a long moment, then extended his hand. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Over the next 3 months, I carefully built my network. I reached out to other longtime clients my grandfather had served. Not all of them, just the ones I knew had been loyal, the ones who'd expressed frustration with the new management. I was careful. I never met anyone at the office. I never used company email. I kept everything separate and documented. Some people thought I was crazy. A 27-year-old receptionist claiming to own part of a consulting firm? It sounded like a fantasy, but I had documentation, legal papers, trust agreements, my grandfather's will. Slowly, people started believing me, started understanding that something was happening beneath the surface. I didn't ask anyone to do anything dramatic. I just asked them to pay attention, to document their interactions with Kenneth and Ramona, to keep records of promises broken and services undelivered. I was building an evidence file, piece by piece. Kenneth and Ramona had no idea. They still saw me as the forgettable receptionist, the girl who smiled blandly and did what she was told. They walked past my desk every day, discussing confidential matters, complaining about difficult clients, planning their next cost-cutting measures. And I listened to everything, documented everything, prepared for everything. My 20th birthday fell on a Thursday in March. I took the day off, telling Kenneth I had a doctor's appointment. Instead, I met with my lawyer, a sharp woman named Veronica, who'd handled my grandfather's estate. The trust transfers to your full control at midnight tonight, she explained, sliding papers across her desk. As of tomorrow morning, you have complete access to your ownership rights. What does that mean practically? It means you can attend board meetings, vote on major decisions, access all financial records, review contracts, and most importantly, you can call for a vote of no confidence in current leadership if you believe they're mismanaging the company. I felt my heart race. How much evidence would I need? Given that you own 30%, you'd need to convince at least 21% of the remaining shareholders to side with you. That would give you 51% control. Kenneth and Ramona own 70% together, but they don't own it equally. Kenneth has 40%. Ramona has 30%. If you can get Ramona on your side, or if you can convince the minority shareholders to support you, you have a path forward. I thought about this carefully. Turning Ramona against Kenneth seemed unlikely. They were partners in every sense. But there were other shareholders, small stakeholders who'd invested over the years, people who'd believed in my grandfather's vision. How do I contact the minority shareholders? Veronica smiled. As of tomorrow, that's public information you have every right to access. Friday morning, I arrived at work at my usual time. Kenneth and Ramona didn't notice anything different, but I felt different. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't just the receptionist. I was an owner. I went through my morning routine normally, answered phones, sorted mail, made coffee, smiled pleasantly when Kenneth walked past without acknowledging me. At 10 o'clock, I sent an email to the company's corporate attorney, copying Veronica. Dear Mr. Stevens, I am writing to inform you that as of March 15th, the trust established by my grandfather, Gordon Walsh, has transferred 30% ownership of Sterling and Webb Consulting to my direct control. Please update all corporate records accordingly. I will be exercising my rights to attend the next board meeting and access all financial documents. Sincerely, Petra Walsh. I hit send and waited. 15 minutes later, Kenneth's office door flew open. Petra, my office. Now, everyone in the open workspace looked up. Kenneth never yelled. He was always smooth, controlled, professional. I stood slowly smoothing my skirt and walked to his office with my head high. This was the moment everything changed. This was the moment I stopped being invisible. Kenneth's face was red when I entered his office. Ramona sat in one of the chairs, her phone in her hand, clearly reading the same email. What is this? Kenneth demanded, waving his phone at me. It's exactly what it says. I own 30% of this company. I have since my grandfather died. The trust transferred to my control yesterday. That's impossible. We bought the entire company. You bought 70%. My grandfathers will left me the remaining 30% in trust until I turn 28. Your lawyers should have caught that during the purchase. I watched understanding dawn on their faces, followed quickly by panic. Ramona spoke first, her voice tight. Why are we just hearing about this now? Because the trust terms required me to remain silent until the transfer was complete. I wasn't legally allowed to disclose my ownership stake before now. This was partially true. The trust had restricted some of my rights, but not my ability to speak. I'd chosen silence as a strategy. Kenneth leaned forward. What do you want? Money? We can buy you out. Name your price. I don't want money. I want this company run properly, the way my grandfather intended. You're a receptionist, Ramona said, her voice dripping with disdain. What do you know about running a consulting firm? I smiled slightly. More than you think. I've been watching you for 5 years. Learning, documenting, preparing. The color drained from Kenneth's face. Documenting. Every client complaint. Every cut corner. Every broken promise. Everything. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. 5 days for Kenneth and Ramona to panic and plan. They tried several approaches during that time. First, they attempted to intimidate me. Kenneth called me into his office repeatedly, suggesting I was making a mistake, that I was in over my head, that I should sell my shares and walk away. I declined politely each time. Then they tried to isolate me. They told other employees I was causing problems, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd fabricated documents. But I'd already spoken to key staff members privately, the ones who'd been around since my grandfather's time, the ones who remembered what the company used to be. They believed me, and more importantly, they were willing to speak up. Finally, Kenneth tried to buy me out directly. He offered me $200,000 for my 30% stake. I did the math in front of him. The company's current valuation is approximately $3 million. My 30% is worth $900,000. You're offering less than a quarter of what it's worth. His jaw tightened. The company isn't worth $3 million anymore. Not with the reputation damage you're causing. The reputation damage I'm causing? That's interesting. Tell me, Kenneth, how many clients have we lost in the past year? He didn't answer. 43, I said quietly. I know, because I'm the one who answers the phone when they call to cancel. The board meeting took place in the conference room. I'd walked past hundreds of times, but never entered. 7 people sat around the table. Kenneth and Ramona. 3 minority shareholders who'd invested over the years. The corporate attorney, Mr. Stevens. And me. I dressed carefully that morning. A professional suit instead of my usual simple dress. My hair pulled back neatly. Minimal makeup. I wanted to look competent, serious, but not threatening. Kenneth called the meeting to order, clearly hoping to control the narrative. We're here to address the unexpected revelation that Petra Walsh holds a minority stake in Sterling and Webb. While this is certainly surprising, it doesn't change the fundamental management structure of the company. Actually, I said quietly, I'd like to propose a vote of no confidence in current leadership. The room went silent. Mr. Stevens cleared his throat. Ms. Walsh, that's a serious action. Do you have grounds? I pulled out a folder and distributed copies to everyone at the table. This document outlines systematic mismanagement over the past 3 years. Client retention has dropped 40%. Service quality metrics have declined across all categories. Employee turnover is at 75%. And most significantly, there's evidence of fraudulent billing practices. Kenneth's face went white. That's slander. It's documented fact. I have emails, client testimonies, and financial records showing that you've been charging premium rates for services delivered by unqualified junior staff. That's fraud. The room erupted in questions. The minority shareholders, 3 men who'd invested hoping to see returns, looked alarmed. How long has this been happening? One of them asked. Since Kenneth and Ramona took over. I have records going back 3 years. Ramona leaned forward. You're a receptionist with a grudge. Why should anyone believe you? Because I'm not just a receptionist. I'm Gordon Walsh's granddaughter. I grew up learning this business, and I've spent 5 years watching you destroy what he built. I turned to Mr. Stevens. I've sent you a complete evidence package. Financial records, client complaints, internal emails discussing how to maximize billing while minimizing actual service delivery. It's all there. Kenneth stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're not going to sit here and be accused by some child who thinks she knows how to run a business. Sit down, Kenneth, one of the minority shareholders said firmly. I want to hear this. Kenneth remained standing, his hands gripping the table. I continued calmly. I'm proposing that Kenneth be removed as CEO and that we restructure leadership. I'm prepared to take an active management role, working with the minority shareholders to restore this company's reputation. You, Ramona laughed. You can't even handle the phones properly. Actually, I handle the phones perfectly. I also handle client relations, schedule management, basic bookkeeping, and about 15 other tasks you've never bothered to notice. While you were focused on extracting maximum profit, I was learning how this business actually operates. The vote was delayed. Mr. Stevens insisted on reviewing my evidence thoroughly before any decision was made. Kenneth and Ramona left the conference room furious. I could hear them arguing in Kenneth's office afterward, their voices carrying through the walls. The minority shareholders approached me separately. Your grandfather was a good man, one of them said. If half of what you're saying is true, we owe it to his memory to make this right. It's all true, and I can prove it. Over the next week, Mr. Stevens conducted his review. He interviewed clients, examined financial records, talked to current and former employees. Kenneth and Ramona tried to control the narrative, but too many people were willing to talk. Too many had complaints. Too many had been mistreated. I continued working at the reception desk, answering phones, maintaining normalcy. But everything had changed. Employees whispered when I passed. Clients asked questions. Kenneth and Ramona avoided me entirely. On Friday afternoon, Mr. Stevens called another board meeting. His face was grave when everyone assembled. I've completed my review, he announced. Ms. Walsh's allegations are substantiated. There's clear evidence of mismanagement, fraudulent billing, and breach of fiduciary duty. Kenneth slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. We've grown this company. Revenue is up. Revenue is up, but profit margins are down because of client churn. You're spending more on marketing to replace lost clients than you're saving on service delivery. The business model is unsustainable. The vote was called. Remove Kenneth as CEO and restructure leadership, or maintain the current structure. The 3 minority shareholders voted for removal. I voted for removal. That gave us 51%. Kenneth and Ramona's combined 70% would have won if they'd stayed united. But Ramona did something unexpected. She abstained. I'm not defending this, she said quietly, looking at Kenneth. You told me the business was healthy. You told me clients were satisfied. You lied to me too. Kenneth's expression turned to shock, then betrayal. Ramona, you can't. The vote is decided, Mr. Stevens interrupted. Kenneth Spencer is removed as CEO effective immediately. The board will appoint interim leadership while we restructure. Kenneth stood, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at me. You've destroyed this company. You'll regret this. No, I said calmly. I'm saving it. From you. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The room sat in stunned silence. Then one of the minority shareholders spoke. Ms. Walsh, we'd like to propose you as interim CEO. You clearly understand the business, and you have the credibility to rebuild client relationships. I took a slow breath. I accept. But I want to be clear. My goal is to restore this company to what my grandfather envisioned. That means prioritizing quality over quick profits. It means treating employees fairly. It means rebuilding trust. They all nodded. And just like that, the invisible receptionist became the CEO. My first act as CEO was to call an all-staff meeting. 30 employees gathered in the main workspace, looking nervous and confused. Rumors had been flying all week. I stood in front of them, the same people who'd walked past my desk for 5 years without really seeing me. My name is Petra Walsh. Most of you know me as the receptionist. What you don't know is that I'm also Gordon Walsh's granddaughter and a 30% owner of this company. Gasps rippled through the crowd. As of yesterday, Kenneth Spencer is no longer CEO. I've been appointed interim CEO by the board, and I want to be very clear about what that means. I paused, making eye contact with as many people as possible. This company lost its way. We prioritized profit over people. We cut corners on quality. We treated clients and employees as disposable. That ends today. Some people looked skeptical. Others looked hopeful. I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers, but I know this business. I learned it from my grandfather. I've watched it for 5 years from the reception desk, seeing everything, hearing everything. A few people smiled at that. Here's what's going to change: fair wages. No more exploiting junior staff. Quality service delivery. No more fraudulent billing. Respect for employees. No more toxic management. I saw heads nodding now. I need your help. I need your honesty. If you see problems, speak up. If you have ideas, share them. We're going to rebuild this company together.